G'day guys, it's Mark here from North Oz, and in today's video I'm going to share with you some of the biggest mistakes that I made when fitting out my 2021 Landcruiser Prado GX460. If you've seen my last couple of videos, you'll know that I am selling this vehicle, so I've been taking a lot of stuff off it. I've spent the last couple of weeks removing my drawer system, putting all the seats back in, all that sort of stuff. I'm just down to the solar panel now and the sign writing. But when I was kind of taking apart the vehicle, I got a few ideas in my head about what I would do differently next time and some of the mistakes that I made when building out this vehicle. If you don't know much about this build, the whole idea was to buy good quality parts, make sure that it's stuff that I can do myself and you guys can do at home, and also it's pretty much done on a budget really as well. So some of the drawers and stuff, I made that by myself, but I also was very careful about where I spent my money. Every time I build a vehicle, whether it's new products or I'm trying a different setup, I always think of something else that I would change next time, so that's what this video is all about. A big part of this build was trying to find extra space around the vehicle to try and put things like my solar panel, an extra set of lights, things like that. The main reason for that is because I didn't want to do a bull bar. I've said this before. I didn't want to put my driving lights on a bull bar because I need to do suspension and it's just going to keep costing me more and more money. So the idea of this build was to try to build it mostly around a roof rack. The roof rack that I went with was the Rhino rack backbone system and also the Pioneer platform to go on top. Now, I got good use out of it, don't get me wrong, and I did put a lot of accessories on there, things like a change room awning and also just a standard shelter awning as well, my Max Tracks and other things like this light and a solar panel. So I've done quite a few things to it. I also had a tie down point there as well, some tie down handles, and that was a really good little kit to tie down my swag because I couldn't fit my swag in the car as well with everything else that I wanted. So it was good for utility, but I really only ended up using Max Tracks sometimes, which I can just pack them when I needed them. So that was a bit of a waste. The solar panel on the roof all the time, that was a bit of a waste as well because I could really only use it when I got to camp anyway. So I should have just gotten a solar blanket, like one of those fold up panels. And the light was more of a spot, and I didn't think that it would be as concentrated, this light, and it didn't really end up doing too much more than the already very powerful headlights were already doing. The tie down point for the swag was the most useful thing, and I used that a lot. I got a lot of use out of that. But would I change the setup if I was to do it again? Yes, the answer is yes. I'm not going to be doing this sort of setup again. I won't be going with the backbone again. Not because it's a bad product, not that at all, but I just think that if I'm going to spend like around $2,000 on this sort of setup, I need to get a lot of use out of it because $2,000 gets you a long way in equipment and, camping trips as well, fuel, stuff like that. So for me, I feel like if I had my time again, I probably just would have kept the sport rails on because it does come with sport rails from the factory and just done some cross rails instead. We've got that sort of setup on our 2022 Prado where we've just kept the sport rails, put some cross rails on from Rhino Rack, and then we can put things on there that we need. So, you can have a little holder for a kayak, or you can probably put your swag on there as well, things like that. So it gives you the same sort of flexibility. It doesn't give you the access to be able to put things like awnings and stuff on, which you can still do with the cross rails. But it does save you a lot of money. It saves you a lot of stuffing around as well. So for me, if I was to do this again, I would have just kept the sport rails on and just gone with some cross rails. And that still would have been good enough to basically do what I wanted to do, which was just basically keep my swag on there when I go camping. The second mistake that I made was not having enough flexibility in the rear setup of the Prado. The Prado is a massive interior space. It's huge. When you take out the third row of seats as well, if your vehicle comes with them, which you can order these vehicles without the third row. But if you have them ordered with the third row, you take that out and you put a drawer system and you put maybe a shelf in there, a couple other things like the setup that I did. I'll link some videos so you can see exactly kind of the sort of setup that I had. Once you do that and you put drawers in, you start putting up cargo barriers and doing that sort of stuff, you lose the flexibility for day to day in terms of, maybe you want to carry something a little bit bigger. Maybe you need to lug a mattress home. Maybe you need to get a piece of furniture back to your house. I couldn't do that. I couldn't even pick up a large grocery shop because, I had all my drawers and my fridge were in there all the time. So I ended up using my second vehicle, which is why it was okay for this vehicle to have a full rear fit out. So I still have my second vehicle to be able to go run around and do the daily sort of jobs, and then leave this ready to go camping and to do some day trips. So, but for my next vehicle, I'm moving towards only having one vehicle. So, you know, that's something as well to consider because I need to have a lot more flexibility in my next setup. So when I say flexibility, I'm talking about things like if I do have things in the back of the vehicle, can I take them out easily? Because if it's difficult, I'm not going to want to do it. So can I take things in and out of the vehicle easily? Is it a hassle? I don't want any hassle. And you know, will it still serve the purpose that I need it to? So is it going to be, again, when I get to the campsite and I've got all my things scattered throughout all these different boxes and I'm not organized, is that going to be a problem? Because I don't want that either. So when I'm talking about flexibility for this vehicle, I made a mistake in that I probably went a little bit too crazy and put all my things in there. I saw what other people were doing on their channels and what other people were doing with their Prados. And I kind of was like, yeah, that's what I want to do. But I found out very quickly that it reduced the effectiveness. It reduced the usability of the vehicle in day-to-day life. And at the end of the day, you know, I'm not doing YouTube and I'm not doing camping full time. So it doesn't make sense to have a big full fit out in the vehicle all the time. And for you guys and for me, when I'm building my next vehicle, I won't be having the back area of my vehicle, consumed by my camping stuff all day, every day. So my third mistake, and probably my biggest one, is that I just ended up buying too much stuff. So behind me here, I've kind of pulled apart, I had to pull apart all my Prado stuff, take everything out of all the little drawers, and there's a lot of little hidey spots in the Prado. So, you know, just things like bowls and mats and pots and all these things, and I didn't really end up using that stuff, you know. Things like the fridge and that I used a lot, so that's fine, but I just found that there was just a lot of little things that I just pushed into the back of drawers that I hid in all these little hidey spots in the Prado. There's lots of those in the Prado, not short on storage in there. But that was a downside because I ended up with a lot of stuff and it wasn't good. Within a couple of weeks of owning the vehicle, I ended up having drop-down tables and rear shelves and, you know, the Rhino Rack platform, and I was already buying so much stuff for it. So kind of after about 8 or 9 months of owning the vehicle, because it is my first brand new vehicle I've owned starting from scratch, I kind of took on a bit more of a minimalist approach. I started saying, well, you know, I don't need a bull bar, and neither do you. I don't need a snorkel, neither do you. I don't need a rear bar, neither do you. I don't need side steps, neither do you. You get the idea. So, you know, it was a bit of a turning point for the channel and for me as well, because I kind of started to go the opposite way. Instead of buying gear and reviewing it, I started talking about what gear you don't need and why. So it's, you know, obviously it's a bit of a different approach, and that's something that I'm going to be taking into my next build. You know, something that when I'm owning my next vehicle, I'm not going to be going crazy with the build. I'm not going to be saying you need this, that, and the other thing. You know, it's going to be very simple. It's going to be very minimalist. It's going to be what I need for my needs, and it's probably going to be very similar for what you guys need as well. Because, you know, I find that when I'm talking to you in the comment section, which is very enjoyable, I like that. I find that you guys are very similar to me and you have very similar lifestyles, and that you go away mostly for weekends and you might do a week or 2 week trip once a year, things like that. So I think that you guys will appreciate, you know, this next build, because it won't be as extravagant and I won't have as many things in the next vehicle. So my main issue with the electrical system was having the solar panel hard mounted onto the roof, which I've spoken about. But the main reason for that is because I'd find I'd park in shade. You know, obviously I don't want to be hot when I'm camping, when I'm traveling. It makes sense. So what I did have is I had a solar panel kind of adapter, you know, whatever you want to call the extension. So I had an Anderson plug mounted onto a bit of an extension lead. What I should have done with that is gotten a solar blanket. That would have made a lot more sense. But instead, I pretty much just kept with the solar panel on the roof, and, you know, it didn't really end up doing much in the end. So for me, next time, I probably won't be doing that. I won't be putting a solar panel on the roof. If anything, I'm going to go out and buy a solar blanket, get rid of that solar panel because it's not particularly useful for me. It's too heavy to carry on a trip anyway. So yeah, and you know, there's other things as well. There's other mistakes that I made with the electrical system in this vehicle. One of them was that I had no battery in the engine bay, and I've got a 100 amp hour lithium battery. The reason why I left it out of the engine bay was to give it longevity because it's hot in the engine bay, but that presented a whole pile of issues. Just trying to find a spot for the battery, nowhere was convenient. I ended up putting it in a little bit of a homemade box that I ended up putting food and stuff in as well. But that didn't last very long. You know, it ended up taking up too much room. It's a lot of weight to be carrying around in the back anyway. And what I should have done, and which is what I am doing in my next vehicle, is I'm putting the battery in the engine bay. And yeah, sure, it might shorten the life of the battery. I'm okay with that because trying to figure out what to do with that battery in the interior of the vehicle was just too much of a hassle with a wagon anyway. If you had maybe a dual cab ute, you could put it behind the seats because you don't really do much of that space anyway. But in a wagon, nowhere is a good spot. Still continuing with the fourth mistake that I made with the electrical system, you know, I got someone to install it for me, which was new to me because I did the electrical system on my D22 Navara, so I knew exactly how that worked. But there was always this element of me thinking, well, what happens if something goes wrong with my electrical system? Do I know how to fix it? The answer to that is no. I don't know where all these wires go. The people that I got to do the electrical system for me, what I was hoping would happen is I would have a good conversation with them, see where all the faults could go wrong, where all the wiring is run through, where are all the fuses. I have a rough idea, but you know, just from looking through the vehicle and you know, looking in the engine bay and things like that. But at the end of the day, the truth is I don't know how this electrical system is wired through the vehicle. I gave them a kind of blueprint to make sure that they install the things that I wanted them to install and where I wanted it to go. But things like fuses and stuff, I don't know where they've put all that stuff. So for me, because I didn't install that, that was a mistake. And what I should have done is found someone or find an auto electrician that is very patient and that would go through with me all the places where faults could happen, and also you know, and show me how to actually fix it. If a fuse blows, where are the fuses? If there is, I don't know, if I can smell smoke or there's maybe electrical contact happening against the body, I don't know, and it's not grounding. Things like where are all the wires being run so I can check them, you know. Things will go wrong, you know. With this hobby, we go off-road, we even if you are mechanically sympathetic and you know, look after the vehicles as well as you can, there's always, and you have the best electrical install, there's always things that can go wrong. So just knowing where everything is a very big help. And that's a mistake that I made, was that I didn't really, you know, I asked them to kind of show me where everything was, but they were just so busy. And that's how things are these days, where all these, you know, mechanics and the auto electricians and the full driving outfitters, they're all so busy that it's kind of like an intrusion to ask, you know, if they can take their time and go through it with me. You know, when I showed up to pick up the vehicle, it was just kind of like, oh yeah, here's your vehicle, pay the money, please. So I didn't, you know, I'm going to choose a different auto electrician next time, of course, but for little stuff, because I'm getting most of it wired up through Toyota, which I'm going to ask them to show me how everything works. But for me, that was, yeah, you know, I went on a little bit about the electrical system, but that's the most important thing of the vehicle. And it's important that you know how it all works, because with this vehicle, whenever I took it out and something, you know, I think in the back of my mind, oh, what's going to happen if my battery is no longer getting charged? Things like that. So I wouldn't know how to fix it. So for me, that was a point of stress, and that was a mistake that I made. I should have asked the auto electrician to spend more time showing me how everything works, but I just didn't really feel comfortable doing that. And on my next build, I will definitely be taking my time, making sure I know where absolutely everything is. The fifth and final mistake that I made was not perfecting my shelter. You know, how do I get shade when it's very hot? And as you can probably tell, I've got sweat coming off me, you know, right now, and I'm undercover. So, you know, shade is very important where I live and where I go camping. So I didn't get my shade right with this build. You know, I didn't get my awnings right. I tried a dome awning, which is very, you know, I'm going to say that's basically as effective as a flat awning, just more of a hassle to put up. But, you know, that didn't work. I ended up taking that off. So for me, I'm still trying to figure out what is the best way to get shade around a campsite. I've thought about, for my next build, I thought about maybe a gazebo, spending a little bit of extra money, getting a nice gazebo. It's lightweight, easy to transport, compact, spend a little bit more money and make sure it's a very good unit. The other thing I thought about is getting a 270-degree awning, but because I don't really want to do a big elaborate you know, roof setup, you know, with the platform, and you know, I don't really want to go that way. And as well, the awnings are very expensive. So for me, I'm still, tell me in the comments, what do you guys do for shade? I just feel like everyone just goes with a straight awning and that's good enough. But from the ones that I've used with the shade, with the sun coming in at the different angles that I camp and that, I often only get a little slither of shade. So I kind of think that the awnings, unpopular opinion, I kind of think awnings are a bit of a waste of time. I haven't had much luck with mine so far, and using a 270-degree awning on the type of vehicle that I'm getting next, which isn't a wagon, that's the only thing I'll give away, you know, it's not really going to work with the setup that I have in mind. So, you know, what do we do in that case? Do we just get kind of like a pop-up sort of shelter? Do we get a gazebo? Do we get, you know, maybe just like a big tarp and try to rig up something when I get to camp? So for me, the fifth mistake that I made, in kind of in summary of my little rant there, was that, you know, I experimented with the awnings. I spent a lot of money on the awnings. I didn't really use them. Even the change room, I used it a couple of times to begin with, but then I just didn't really end up using it after that. So, you know, awnings for me, I spent probably close to around $700 or $800 on awnings. That was a waste of money. I shouldn't have done that. What I should have done is just gotten something pop up, especially for a change room. The pop-up change rooms are, you know, dirt cheap. They do the exact same job as an awning one does. You know, I should have gone with that. So tell me in the comment section, what would you guys do if you're in my position? How do you guys get shade around your campsite? I'll be interested to know. So that concludes my 5 mistakes that I made on this vehicle. And, you know, while I did make some mistakes on this vehicle, the most important thing was that I learnt from them. And going into my next build, there are some things that I definitely won't be doing to that, but there are also things that I will be doing to it. Through trial and error, I've actually found that there are some things that I use more than others. I made a couple of videos on the top 5 things that you should do to your four-wheel drive, so I've made a couple of videos of those, so I'll make sure I link those for you to watch, but I'll definitely be doing those to the new vehicle I've got coming in. But in terms of mistakes, you know, I learned a lot. In my next build, I'm going to save a lot of money, not having to stuff around with, you know, buying all these different awnings and not using them. You know, I should have done a different setup on the roof anyway, but things like that, I will definitely be saving a little bit of money on. I'm going to use that, what I learned, to build my next vehicle. So if this video helped you out, make sure you like it, subscribe, do all that good stuff. I do have another couple of videos coming out, guys, very soon. So I'm trying to get a lot of content out to you guys because, you know, the channel is, you know, it's coming along now. You know, thank you for those people that are subscribing and joining the journey as we go. You know, so I've got a couple of videos coming out. I've got obviously the new 4-wheel drive release is going to be coming out at the end of the month, and I've also got a couple of comparison videos as well. I've got a comparison to do of the Fortuner because we have a Fortuner in the family now, and I'm going to be doing a video comparing that to the Prado to see which one you should buy. So that's going to be interesting as well. I'm really looking forward to that. I'm going to film that one later in the week. But yeah, apart from that, guys, that's pretty much it. Thank you so much for commenting, subscribing, do all the good stuff that you guys do. I really do appreciate it, and I'll see you very shortly in our next video.